Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. This is MahfuzVanGogh, your dredge guy, and today we are still back in Modern because we achieved the best finish with a Phoenix Dredge ever, second place in my last Modern challenge. And I did record in real time with real time comments, but unfortunately my laptop overheated with the long recording, and my voice wasn't being recorded at the same time as the video progressed, so we had something non-synchronized, so the video cannot be uploaded like it was recorded, and this is why I will have a lot of work here to record it again, voicing over the video and doing now new commentary. Now that we know that I had this great finish, how can we understand and maybe get even better from now for the future? Because I believe that this deck is constantly evolving. Every week we can adapt to something due to the metagame changes, or maybe just improve something here or there. Let's remember that my deck is still a new deck. Other players are getting this deck now, learning how to play it. If you're not in my Patreon, you should be there. I have some guides already done and ready to read and play. So you can understand how to play this easily. The sideboard portion sometimes is tricky. I've been testing something here and there, but today's list is the same list that we saw in my previous video. I recorded that league and the legacy and the modern challenge on the same day, one after another. So if you didn't watch the last video, please go there too, because it was great to win a trophy and then after that just getting second place in a modern challenge. So I'll not explain the whole deck again. If you're new here on the channel, please go there on my previous video. I have maybe 10 minutes or more just talking about the deck tech, but hopefully you enjoy my work here as a commentator. I will try my best to do great comments on every single moment on each round of this great tournament. Hopefully you enjoyed this here with me. Click the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And at the end of the video, I will come back to talk a little bit about possible changes that we can do from now on. Let's start this right now. I want to say thank you to all my patrons that you can see here on this page. Guys, you are awesome, and I can create content because of your continuous support. If you also want to help me as a content creator, please go there, check my Patreon page, patreon.com/thedredgeguy. See you there. So this is our first round. I had a mulligan here. This was almost good. My opponent kept 7 cards. And this is unfortunately a mulligan as well. Now this is better because we have access to dredgers. We have our faster enabler, but also a discard spell. And we have access to all of them. Only 5 cards, but hopefully this is already good enough. My opponent kept 7 and they have a Hallowed Fountain and Tamio. So this is probably a control deck. We play Thundering Falls here. I would love to keep Blood Crypt on top since I have Inquisition of Kozilek. And now my opponent plays Flooded Strand and attacks. Usually in Modern, when you see an opponent doing something slow like this, or deck kind of prey on decks like this, right? If your opponent is slow, if they play control-ish, you usually like that. But my opponent has also a blink game plan with Philia. Nothing scary so far. Tamio is accumulating clues, but so far so good. My opponent didn't flip Tamio. And at the end of their turn, I will just grab my other commercial district. No rush. And looting is amazing to fit this great hand that we have on turn 3, but it is a good hand. Let's see our opponent's hand with Inquisition, Force of Negation, and Ephemerate. Ephemerate is the strongest card here. If my opponent wants to counter our Faithless Looting, that's fine. We can definitely wait. Alright, my opponent chose to not counter or looting. They will probably counter our Inquiry here, because this will force them to discard Solitudes. But maybe my opponent wants to flip Tamio. Burning Inquiry will flip Tamio immediately, because your opponent will just draw 3 cards, and my opponent chose to not do a single thing. They just want to draw extra cards, and our Inquiry was pretty good. My opponent discarded both Solitudes. Tamio is flipped, but we don't care about that. We will bring back 1 Phoenix. My opponent will draw a card, trying to hit something to deal with our Phoenix, but they couldn't. So we'll just finish Tamio. Bye-bye, Tamio. And now my opponent has a sad Force of Negation in their hand. And Quantum Riddler is a good one. My opponent will refill their hand with the great synergy between Riddler and Failure. And now Riddler is blinked. But since my opponent already had some cards in their hand, this is just a 2-card draw spell, right? Just a divination. And now we will dredge 3 here. Again, no rush. We don't have our Phoenixes yet in our graveyard. So let's bring back some lands. And this way, our turn 5 will be excellent. My opponent might counter some of our spells here, so we have a Force of Negation after all. I just play my basic land and cast Otherworldly Gaze. Okay, we have good hits on top. But my opponent has Force of Negation, so let's think here. What I should keep. I don't remember what was my decision. I think I probably put everything in my graveyard. Maybe I kept only Inquisition on top. Let's see. Dart in our graveyard. Talent in my graveyard, yeah. And now the only decision is Inquisition on top, right. And I think this was the right decision, because now we can cast Inquisition at the beginning of our turn, on our first main step, and then proceed to resolve anything that we want, probably flashback to looting. My opponent played Marsh Flats, cracking it immediately. For a Water Grave, my opponent is already down to 7, and that's pretty scary. Okay, my opponent will cast Solitude to finish our Phoenix. And at this point of the game, this is not that bad, because my opponent didn't gain life with Solitude. And we have more Phoenixes coming in our way, hopefully. But now my opponent is bringing in the good creatures. This Inquisition will show us if we have... Okay, just Force of Negation and Subtlety. So if we find 2 more Phoenixes, we win. Or maybe one Phoenix and 1 Creeping Chill. This is already enough to win the game. So you have good chances to win the game here. Thinning the deck is good at this point. This land can enter tapped. And I'll cast Faithless Looting. Dredge 5, nothing. And Dredge 5, 2 chills. Alright, we won. We don't need Phoenix to win anymore. Just our Lava Dart. And my opponent lost the first game. So this is Esper Blink. And I think that's pretty funny how people are calling this deck Esper Generic Blink. Or just Kai Generic Blink. I think this is hilarious. And I chose to submit the deck without any changes because I feel like we are already favored to win against the Blink decks because we have the 4 Inquisition of Kozilek in the main deck. Of course, we could include maybe Surgical Extraction, something like that, but this is a card that I enjoy playing against the red build with Flage, and this is not the case. So I think we are already pre-boarded against Esper Blink control. Opponent kept 7 cards again, and I decided to keep this. This is not our strongest option, but we have so many enablers and dredgers, we just need to find more lands here. Steam Vents is our first land of choice, and we found 2 other lands, so far so good. This is not an aggressive hand, but we have dredgers, enablers, and lands. My opponent played Marsh Flats, and we'll dredge 5. Not that many good cards there, and here we can choose if we want to play slower or faster. I cracked Arid Missa for a Stomping Ground untapped, and I decided to play slower with an Otherworldly Gaze first. We didn't hit many good cards, so Faithless Looting now, and Dredge 5, and Dredge 4. We found 2 Phoenixes, which give us some hope to just reanimate our Phoenixes immediately and start attacking, right? If, since we already have 1 life from the loam there, we can start attacking here. But this is always a scary approach, but I decided to do it anyways, because it's already pretty difficult to win on the draw against this deck after sideboarding. And now my opponent needs to have some answers. And they grabbed a Plains and Solitude, Exiling Solitude. So I think my opponent probably has an Ephemerate here, yeah. So this was pretty good. Solitude plus Ephemerate is something that your Blink opponent, your opponent playing Blink, will almost always have in their starting hands, right? So now our chances to win this game are pretty low, and especially now that my opponent played the Nehu Spellbomb that they were holding this whole time, probably. We draw Inquisition of Kozilek, and this is over. Let's concede here to save some time. Now we will be on the play. And again, no changes. We know about Spellbomb, we know about Solitude. Inquisition would be pretty good in our starting hand, but we can't say no to a hand like this, right? Our 2 best treasures in our starting hand, we need to just go for it. My opponent had a Force of Negation, exiling Mystical Dispute. So now our chances to win this 3rd game are pretty low. From now we are playing from the top of our deck. We need something. Artemis is not something, but thankfully we have 1 more Surveil land in our deck. So cracking Artemis to find surveil land, maybe put us back on track. My opponent searched for a surveil land, kept on top, played Polluted Delta for a Hallowed Fountain, and Psychic Frog. Psychic Frog is a great creature, but on the draw against us is maybe a little bit slow, especially if we have Stinkwood Imp as a blocker. So if I don't find an enabler here, I will probably just cast Stinkwood Imp as a blocker, and my opponent playing Esper without red will have some answers against 1/2 flyers, right? But maybe they don't have the answer in their starting hand. Let's see. And we have another imp in our hand. My opponent is already down to 13, and they had Spellbomb the whole time. In Modern, it's not the same as in Legacy, right? In Legacy, usually if you have your Spellbomb, you just play it on turn 1 because your opponent can just win in a single turn. In Modern, I see players every time just holding this information until they feel they need it. And this might be fatal against a deck like ours, because we have ways to win in a single turn, right? But our opponent did it anyways. I played Thundering Falls here, and we don't want Arid Missa. I decided to cast Looting here just to see if my opponent wants to maybe crack that Spellbomb, and then we can come back to the game. I kept Creeping Chill here. You never know if you need to cast this Creeping Chill to drain the last 3 points of life from your opponent. One thing that I noticed is that my opponent is stuck with only 2 lands. They kept a hand with Force of Negation, Spellbomb, Psychic Frog, but only 2 lands. And now I'll pass the turn here. We are just holding Lava Dart. My opponent finds the 3rd land. So what they can do? My opponent decided to attack here, and probably with the intention of killing my Stinkwood Imp and then exiling it with a Spellbomb. My opponent had a Consign to Memory, so their Psychic Frog is alive. But I have another Stinkwood Imp in my hand. So my opponent spent several resources, but I have a 1/2 flying in my hand. And also a 3/2 flying haste if I need to cast it naturally. So let's just cast a Stinkwood Imp and pass. My opponent cracked Marsh Flats for a Surveil land and kept the card on top. That's especially scary. It was probably the 4th land. My opponent has 3 cards in their hand. They will attack anyways. We will definitely block. Let's see if they have another Consign. No, alright. But this was a weird attack. Yeah, because my opponent had Surgical Extract. Yeah. So they paid life for that Surgical Extraction. And this is important because we have 8 points of damage in our hand. And now they have a Riddler, drew 2 cards, and an Ephemerate. So my opponent is slightly ahead here. I mean, I would say just slightly because our deck can rebuild itself so fast. And we are on a healthy 19 life. And my opponent is down to 6. But they can win this easily if they start drawing some Solitudes. So my opponent decided to draw 2 more cards with Riddler instead of attacking. They found a tapped Triumph. And now they have a clue. Will they crack the clue? Yes, immediately, so they can flip Tamiyo. And this is interesting because now our Phoenix will attack only as a 2/1. We draw Burning Inquiry. Burning Inquiry is usually a great top deck for situations like this. So we can try to even win this turn with a little bit of luck, or maybe just improve our hand a lot. Burning Inquiry here. My opponent had Ephemerate, Tamiyo, and Leyline Binding. We found an Otherworldly Gaze. We'll naturally reanimate that Phoenix. My opponent will counter our Mystical Dispute. That's fine. So our Phoenix is back on track. And I decided to not attack here. My opponent grabbed a Consign to Memory and a Psychic Frog. But yeah, but we have enough to win the game now. Creeping Chill, Dart, and Conflagrate are enough to just win the game unless my opponent has several counter spells. Maybe I thought that my opponent could have Philia, attacking with the dog. Not sure. I kept the Dart on top because if my opponent has something like a Consign to Memory plus Ephemerate, the Dart on top will be 2 extra spells and 2 extra damage. So just an insurance in case my opponent has exactly Consign to Memory plus Force of Negation here. And my opponent had a Consign to Memory for Creeping Chill. They didn't need to pay the Replicate cost, which makes me think they have nothing else besides that. So I decided to attack my opponent here, just to force them to discard more cards to Psychic Frog. And this is actually a move here that I'm not sure if it was correct to attack with my Phoenix here. But since I saw Leyline Binding, I know my opponent has Solitudes. Not sure if this was the correct move. But now I can try to finish Frog with darts. Let's see if this is what I thought, since I have 2 points of damage on the top of my deck. And now my opponent, yeah, this is exactly what my... I think this was actually pretty clever. because Frog is the card advantage engine from the other side of the table, and finishing Frog here, forcing my opponent to discard their whole hand. Of course, they will draw 2 more cards thanks to Riddler, but I think this was actually pretty clever. Finishing Frog here before it causes us more trouble. I can even finish Tamio. Since my opponent is Hellbent, I can cast Conflagrate, targeting Tamio and Psychic Frog here, and then I'll have 3 points of damage plus Faithless Looting plus Phoenix next turn. So many different lines, right? I'm watching here and doing this commentary some days after, 4 or 5 days after this challenge. And I think this was pretty clever. Maybe we could win through other means, but you saw that my opponent had 2 Mystical Disputes in their hand. So I think this was pretty clever. Now they don't have Tamio, so our Phoenixes will attack as 3/2s, and no Giant Frog to attack us and drill 3 more cards thanks to Riddler. My opponent now has 2 cards in their hand. It could be anything, even Solitude. They decided to keep Riddler to block. They know what is happening here. So I decided to Dredge instead and just cast Looting. We have 2 Phoenixes now. Dredge 3, Dredge 4. The 3rd Phoenix is there. So unless my opponent has another consign to memory, they will just lose here. And I decided that the best thing we could do is just go for it. My opponent had a weird creature just to force our Dart to go targeting that instead. But now we have 3 Phoenixes coming back to attack my opponent for lethal. This 3rd game was harder than expected, but we won anyways. Let's go to our next match. Round 2 against Xuxa or Xuxa. And I remember this match. This match was pretty amazing and kind of unexpected. My opponent started with Mountain and Vexing Bubble. Vexing Bubble counters our Lava Dart, and that's it. We don't have Lava Darts now, so we don't care. We have 2 Stinkwood Imps and Looting plus Inquiry for next turn. Maybe we just wait for turn 3. Let's see. My opponent has an aggressive deck with Mountain and a second Mountain and Raw. So this is Raw Storm, and we might not have the speed to win this on the draw unless my opponent don't have a turn 3 win. That's why I'm just going for it, hoping that we can just find Phoenixes to push enough damage, Phoenixes plus Creeping Chills here. So we already found 2 Phoenixes, but we need Chills and maybe 1 more Phoenix. Dredge 5, and Dredge 5. Okay, 1 Phoenix, 1 Chill. My opponent discarded Monomorphose, so let's cast our Dart just to push some damage. This is turn 2, guys, and I needed to be super aggressive to try to have a chance to win here. My opponent is down to 4, and this is interesting because Raw, if my opponent lose the coin flip 4 times in a row, we can just win the game here. So my opponent cast Monomorphose, and they won the flip, and my opponent decided to flip Raw immediately, because my opponent knows that they need to win the game now. We have lethal on board. My opponent also has Artist's Talent, so this is a different build compared to what I've been dealing with in leagues. 2 cards in my opponent's hand, down to 3. Surveil Land, Ritual, Monomorphose. My opponent is Hellbent at this point. They cracked Lava Dart. I mean, Vexing Bubble. And we have a Lava Dart, so my opponent is virtually on 2 life. But they found a Reckless Impulse and Desperate Ritual and Passing Flames. And from here, my opponent probably have the win, which is always a little bit frustrating, right? Because we had an amazing turn 2, but my opponent was on the play. Modern these days, the format is amazing. I'm having lots of fun. I don't think we need any changes, any bans or unbans in Modern right now. But I think the format values a lot the starting on the play. Like even more than in Legacy now, because Legacy we have Force of Will and other forces, and in Modern, since we have so many aggressive decks and combo aggressive decks like Raw Storm, usually whoever wins the coin or the die roll has an amazing advantage. I'm speaking from my own perspective here. Every time I play Phoenix Dredge and I'm on the play, I feel like I have at least one third extra win rate when I'm on the play compared from when I on the draw, and that's a lot. My opponent found a Grape Shot and won the game 1, so we need to build a comeback somehow against this aggressive deck. So now what? We don't have many tools in our current sideboard against Storm. Dredge builds in the past had something against Storm like Damping Sphere, but we cannot cast Damping Sphere because it hurts us a lot, right? So it's not a possibility. I decided to just submit the deck back. In the previous week, I tested some Consign to Memories in the sideboard, but I don't think Consign to Memory is especially good against Raw Storm. We can counter one artifact, or the thing is, if you just counter the Grape Shot trigger, your opponent just have Passing Flames and can cast a Grape Shot again. I tried to use Consign to Memory like I did in Legacy at some point, because in Legacy you can counter the Storm trigger, and usually your opponent will not have anything against you. But in Modern uses Passing Flames all the time, so we could include Surgical Extraction, but again, especially on the play, I think the right call is just go for it with your plan. In the previous game, if we were on the play, we would have the win. And this is a great starting hand. We have our full combo here. Talent, Dredgers, Inquiry, Otherworldly Gaze, and lands can help us to find our third land. But this hand is amazing. We will probably just win on game 3 unless my opponent has an answer. I honestly don't remember. Let's see. I played Bloodstained Mire and immediately went for Steam Vents and Otherworldly Gaze. We found our third land, so we can keep Eridemis on top and pass. And my opponent has Scalding Tarn, cracking it for Sacred Foundry this time instead of the basic Mountain. This is something to be alert. My opponent might have some answer, some white answer in their hand. I grabbed Stomping Ground and played Artist's Talent immediately. This is our strongest plan. My opponent has Bloodstained Mire for a basic Mountain. And Prismatic Ending coming from the sideboard to solve their problem. And now we need to win without talent. As I always say here on this channel when I'm playing Phoenix Dredge, our deck can win pretty easily without talent, but we just need a little bit more work, right? So let's cast Burning Inquiry here, Dredge 3, Dredge 5, and that's it. My opponent discarded Passing Flames, Raw, and Desperate Ritual. Unfortunately, we don't have Phoenix yet in our graveyard, so let's just pass a turn back. My opponent cast a Rain's Resolve and played a Surveil Land, so maybe my opponent needed that Raw. Never underestimate the ability of Burning Inquiry to mess with opponent's hands, especially combo players. Now it's our turn, we'll Dredge 4. We have several spells here. Let's see what's on top of our deck first with Commercial District. Or maybe, yeah, I think I decided here to bring some lands back first. And instead of playing Commercial District, I decided to cast the Otherworldly Gaze. Since we don't have any Faithless Looting yet, this will put us down to 13. But it seems is our best chance to win the game. Creeping Show is good. Ogre Thug is good. And I decided to not keep Inquisition here. We need to find our finishers to win this game on time. Keeping Inquisition, since we don't have looting in our graveyard, will not be a good thing. My opponent finds a Raw and Metamorphose, and at this point I feel like, well, we lost, right? My opponent has Raw, Metamorphose. Probably they already have Passing Flames in their graveyard. So at this moment I'm thinking, well, this is it. We lost round 2 to a combo player, and it is what it is. My opponent is trying to combo with Raw. They lost on the die roll once, and now my opponent stopped to think. So maybe we have a chance here. My opponent has only 2 mana in their mana pool. They decided to keep Raw untapped, so they want to flip Raw somehow, and they decided to crack Vexing Bauble and play another one. So that probably means they don't have the win and they passed back to us. So this is our chance. Otherworldly Gaze in our upkeep is an amazing control element because now we have Phoenix, Chill, and Looting. My opponent is down to 6. We need to find one more Chill or one more Phoenix. Actually, we already have the win here. Oh no, we don't have the win because of Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble will counter our darts. We have 1 dart from our hand. We need to find 1 Chill or 1 Phoenix. Dredge 4, 1 Chill, and 1 Phoenix. So we have the win here. And I couldn't believe when I saw that. But let's not forget, this is only game 2. And we were on the play here. But now we will have a game 3 on the draw. We won with Phoenixes. My opponent had Raw, but too many bubbles in their hand instead of good spells. Vexing Bubble seems good against control decks, cards that have lots of free spells. But we only have darts, so I'm not sure if my opponent did the right choice, including that card against us. Again, I chose to just submit the deck back. We could try maybe Conflagrate, maybe... but the thing is, we never have enough tools to... I decided to mulligan this, and this is also a mulligan. This is our best hand so far. And now we have almost our full combo here. We want an enabler, an extra enabler. Talent alone is not an enabler. My opponent played Scalding Tarn. They kept 7 cards, so that's pretty scary. We found a second talent. If we have time to play the second talent, this could be a game changer. But usually against this opponent, we don't have that much time. Thankfully, we have this Inquisition of Kozilek. My opponent's hand is pretty bad. Their only way to draw more cards is Metamorphose here. Wish is probably the scariest card, but they are pretty far from casting Wish to have a good thing here on their favor. So I decided to just take the Metamorphose. And my opponent has a Surveil land. And they kept the card on top. Another Surveil land for my opponent. So they will try something on turn 3. That means we can... Oh, Burning Increase is exactly what we wanted. Now we have the full combo. I would like to have 1/3 land here. But we can win with a Talent Increase and just 2 lands on turn 3. It would be better to have a 3rd land, but we can win here. My opponent has Bloodstained Mire and Prismatic Ending. Again, from the top of their deck, we found a 2nd Increase here. Not exactly what we wanted. We would prefer a 3rd land or Looting or many other cards. My opponent has Sacred Foundry, draws a card, Reckless Impulse, Basic Mountain, they play it, and now they passed the turn. And we found another treasure. So let's try to do our thing, right? We might help our opponent a little bit here because their hand is not that good, but we can definitely win the game here if we are a little bit lucky. We were not, but Increase found us a Looting. So I can just cast my 2nd Increase here, or Looting. I decided to cast Increase, Dredge, 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 and now we found a Chill, but no Phoenixes yet. And now we don't have... oh no, wait, we have 1 Phoenix, just 1. So let's try to find more Phoenixes here. I decided to go all in at this point. After 2 Increase, let's just go for it. We found 1 extra Phoenix there, but we don't have lethal yet. We will put our opponent down to 4 again. So this is it. We did the best thing we could do. We have the win next turn. My opponent needs to win the game this turn, and we don't know their hand anymore because they discarded all the cards that they had on the previous turn. They found a Raw and Reckless Impulse. Raw lost the die roll, so my opponent is down to 3. We don't have darts anymore. My opponent is on 3 life. They cast Metamorphose. Raw lost the die roll again. My opponent is choosing tails, but flipping heads. And now Rinse Resolve. My opponent lost the die roll the 3rd time in a row, and now Desperate Retro. And my opponent lost the die roll 4 times in a row. And we won the game. I couldn't believe it. Round 3, we are paired against AlphaGo. And this is not good, right? Let's mulligan. We are on the draw again. This hand, right? I decided to keep on the draw because at least we have 3 lands and we have an answer to a quick, fast creature. And Other Gaze is a great card. My opponent has Guide of Soul, so this is Boros Energy. And I found Inquisition of Kozilek on the top of my deck. This is pretty good because now I can start the game with Inquisition. But I decided to first hold Lava Dart and Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent might have an Ocelot Pride or Ragavan. Or maybe it's just better to cast Otherworldly Gaze to see what's on top. And my opponent had an Ocelot Pride. So before we lose the game against cats, I decided to just destroy Pride immediately. And now on my upkeep, I can cast Otherworldly Gaze and see what's on top. Talent, Inquisition, and Synquidimp. Synquidimp obviously in the graveyard. And since I already have an Inquisition, I chose to just keep Talent on top. And now it's our time to cast Inquisition of Kozilek. My opponent has only 2 cards in their hand. One of them was a removal spell. So my opponent has just a land, a good land, Arena of Glory. And they found something else, which is Voice of Victory with Haste. That's pretty scary because my opponent will gain tons of life here. This was a pretty good card on top of my opponent's deck. They will go almost infinite on life here. And at that point, I think, can we still win this game? Can we? We are down to 2. So let's dredge. Okay, 1 Phoenix. But I don't think I have enough tools to win this game. My opponent will have some flyers and some tokens. So I need to do a miracle here. And I don't think we have a miracle. All of my my opponent's creatures are buffed with tons of resistance. So the only thing I can do is casting Lava Dart targeting my opponent here and trying to draw a card. Like I need to draw Burning Inquiry, Looting. I need to draw something here. If I don't, I will just lose. And I draw Arclight Phoenix. All right. If we had a Burning Inquiry on top, we could have a chance to win this game, because we can deal 26 damage in a single turn against an opponent. 4 Phoenixes, 4 Chills are already 24 damage, but we needed Burning Inquiry or maybe looting if we were pretty lucky. So we lost game 1. And now against Energy, after sideboarding, on the play, I decided to not do anything, I think. Let's remember that this was my first day trying this new configuration with discard spells in my main deck. So I wasn't sure about how to include more answers like Lightning Axe against this opponent, which is a great card. But on the play, I kind of chose to trust my own game plan. And let's start with Inquisition of Kozilek here, targeting my opponent. They had Surgical Extraction, so Inquisition was pretty good. But their hand is actually fast, and my opponent can win the game here without Surgical Extraction if we don't find lands. We need lands. My opponent played Marsh Flats, cracked it for a Sacred Foundry down to 17, and played Regavan. We draw a land, which is good, but at this point I'm terrified because my opponent's hand is pretty good. So we couldn't find a third land here. We don't have blue mana. 3 increase is everything we have, so let's try them. We couldn't reach more lands or more dredgers, but my opponent discarded a Journey and Voice of Victory. That's a win. And now my opponent is down to 14. We don't have darts. Next turn, we'll need to be a little bit lucky with our Inquiry plus Inquisition of Kozilek and Lava Dart here. My opponent exiled an Otherworldly Gaze. I feel like this game had a little bit of bad variance for us. This is one of the rare moments where having 4 colors of mana actually hurt our deck, because if this Blood Crypt was just a Steam Vents, we could cast Otherworldly Gaze, but then my opponent would have a Surgical Extraction, so it is hard to be sure about what is better. I feel like our deck benefits a lot of having 4 colors, but we unfortunately couldn't find a third land here. So at this point, my opponent already has a Flage. They can cast a Flage next turn, so we need to be pretty lucky. We found a Creeping Chill, but we have only 1 Thug there. Let's see my opponent's hand first. Voice of Victory and another Regavan. I took the Voice. And now my plan is resolve this Inquiry, finding some Arclight Phoenix and Lava Darts to destroy Regavan. We found only 1 Phoenix and no Dart on the top 32 cards. So you see here, we could have the win with just a little bit better variance, but unfortunately only 1 Phoenix. We could have 1 Dart and 1 Phoenix, or 1 Dart and 1 Chill. It would be enough. But 0 darts on the top 32 cards. And now my opponent will just cast Flage. They had a Ring of Glory there, but this is already turn 3, right? My opponent's Regavan needed that treasure to cast Flage. And now my opponent is back to 10. Can we win from here? Doing some math here, I see that we can't win by just dredging, so I decided to draw probably. Yeah, and we draw a dredger and I concede. This usually is a balanced match, but we had no choice here. Right guys, this is round 4, and this was one of the most exciting matches in the whole tournament against SanPop. This time we are on the play, and this is a good hand. We have a little bit of everything, our best enablers. We have 1 dredger, we have lands. We need to put something back on the bottom of our deck. Since we have low and probably a land, but dart can also be good. We are on the play, so I decided for no darts here. Like, we have our best enablers, we have 3 lands already. Let's just do our thing. And we found a dart on top that can wait in our graveyard. My opponent had Urza Saga and Amulet of Vigor, Amulet. So now this is a race. Looting, we found nothing useful, only more and more lands. So another land with Thundering Falls. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lands in 11 cards. Not a good rate. My opponent's Saga will go up next turn, probably finding another Amulet. My opponent has Malevolent Rumble, finding a Grazer. And that's it. So Dredge 3, more lands. And at this point, our only chance to win this game is by hurting my opponent's hand with Burning Inquiry. Our opponent's deck is so good, one of the best modern decks ever, right? Titan usually is a tier 1 deck in every modern format. So our only chance to win this game here is by forcing them to discard cards. And they discarded Primeval Titan and Scapeshift and the Grazer. So I decided to kill the Eldrazi Spawn token, so they cannot have great stuff next turn. And now I'll attack my opponent, putting them down to 11. But this might not be enough, because even if my opponent discarded a Titan and Escape Shift, maybe they have another Titan. So let's see. My opponent tapped Urza Saga for mana. Vexing Bubble is my opponent's choice just to draw a card. That means we might have a chance. My opponent used their resources just to draw an extra card, and they found another Amulet. And now they have lots of mana with Crumbling Vestige. They played a third Amulet and now a Grazer. 2 cards remaining in my opponent's hand. And at this point, I'm playing the match and I'm so scared. My opponent has an Analyst, Aftermath Analyst. And they sacrifice this amazing card to bring back all of their lands. 3 Amulets will trigger lots and lots of times here. And I can't concede the match because I don't know for sure if this is a win for my opponent or not. So triggers, Saga trigger, Saga's trigger, many lands, and my opponent passed. So my opponent had several lands, but only that. So we might have a chance here, but my opponent has a blocker. And we have only Life from the Loam and a Dream. Creeping Chill is a good start. And we have a looting there, but we don't have dredgers in our graveyard. So I decided to crack Wooded Foothills here and grab our basic mountain. And cast looting. We have a Golgari Thug there. It was milled now. So Dredge 4. And now we have another Chill and Conflagrate. And because of this Chill, we have the win. Do we? My opponent has 3 cards in their hand, so let's see. I will attack with 2 Phoenixes. My opponent blocks one of them. And Otawara. And we don't have the win because my opponent bounced our Phoenix. We can win next turn, but not this turn. We have Conflagrate, Darts, and Phoenix, but we couldn't win this turn. My opponent needs to draw something here. And they conceded the game. We won game 1. And this was a Burning Inquiry win, guys. This was just a win because of Burning Inquiry. My opponent had Titan and probably Escape Shift in their hand. And we left them with a bad hand after our Burning Inquiry. We had so many lands in the first 3 turns of the game, but we managed to win anyways. So against Titan, we don't have that many cards against Titan here. We could try to be lucky with the Surgical Extraction, since we have discard spells and increase. But especially on the draw, our Inquisitions might not be good enough on the draw. Our best card to be on my opponent's hand, if those Inquisitions were Thoughtseizes, we could keep them. But I decided to include Pick Your Poison instead, because it can always deal with Urza Saga or the first Amulet. 2 Bocejos and 2 Meltdowns. And I decided to side out 1 talent and 1 mountain. And this is because I know that a turn 2 artist's talent will not win the game against my opponent, especially on the draw. Okay, this is interesting because we have Pick Your Poison, we have Bocejo, but we don't have our own plan. I decided to keep it because we need to be a little bit lucky to win against my opponent's best plays. My opponent kept 7 cards. They have Urza Saga. So we can deal with our first, with my opponent's first Saga here. We have a clean answer in Pick Your Poison. So each opponent sacrifices an enchantment. And if this was my opponent's best card in their hand, no, they have a second Saga, and the Rumble. And Rumble is good because Aftermath Analyst is pretty good. Maybe my opponent wants Lotus Field instead. They chose the Analyst, the Detective. And now we have a Bocejo here. We can destroy my opponent's second Saga, but taking a whole turn to do that, and my opponent has a clean way to get lands back from the graveyard. It doesn't feel good, but we probably need to do that, right? We have a draw step here. It was a land. So I played my land. I cracked Scalding Tarn for a Steam Vent. And let's go to destroy Urza Saga, but ramp my opponent a little bit. And now my opponent has 3 available mana. No Amulet yet, but they have an Analyst. And now just a Vestige tapped and Spelunking. Spelunking. And Grew Turf. And now my opponent is probably good to win the game soon. We need to find something. Talent is pretty good. Talent gives me some hope. Not sure if we can win here. But at the same time, I see that Conflagrates are just clean answer against Analyst, right? I don't want my opponent to grab those Sagas back. So here I'm doing some math. Do I cast Looting and then Conflagrate? Do I cast Conflagrate, keep looting? I need to cause only 3 damage to Analyst. So I chose my basic mountain here. And looting. We found Inquiry and Loam. So we have good tools for the next turn. But we cannot keep all of them in our hand. So let's destroy Analyst here. I can keep only one card in my hand. Which one? I decided to keep Talent. Thinking now Burning Inquiry would also be a good choice. I decided for Talent here because I can cast Loam Talent and in the next turn cast Looting with Flashback and maybe win the game. My opponent had another land. And then the game got stuck a little bit. I needed to restart model. And then I see that my opponent found a Primeval Titan and put us down to 7. So we need to win this turn basically. So I decided to dredge 5 and we found a Lava Dart. But this is probably not enough to win here from 0. Let's see. Lava Dart. Discard Instinct with Imp. Dredge 5. We found another Dart. No Phoenixes yet. So second Dart, targeting my opponent. We need to be incredibly lucky here, like finding all of our darts and chills on the top 10 cards. We found another Dart. And then I decided to draw instead, right? That's why I tapped for mana there. I decided to draw. I drew another land. So I play it. And now I cast Otherworldly Gaze. Comboing off. We finally found an Arclight Phoenix, but this is not enough to win the game. So I concede. Now we will have game 3, and it was pretty good to win game 1, because now we will be on the play. And on the play, I decided that I didn't want Bosejos. Bosejos are just too reactive, and I wanted Talent back. I don't want Meltdown. Even Pick Your Poison, I'm not sure if I want on the play. It is like we saw against the Storm deck. Being on the play, we are favored against almost everyone. So since we have only 2 Pick Your Poison, I kept 2 and included back 2 copies of Inquisition. Was that my choice? Yeah. But I could see myself just going with 4 Inquisitions and that's it. I kept this hand because this hand has a clear game plan. We already have 2 Phoenixes in our hand and we know that we need to be fast. But we need to find more lands here. This is not a perfect hand. And we need at least 2 more lands to have good chances to win on turn 3. Loam is good as long as we find our green mana. Inquiry might be good as we saw on game 1. Inquiry is good against Titan. My opponent had a mulligan to 6. So we start with Steam Vents and Looting. We found what we needed. So we can discard Thug and Loam. And now my opponent plays the first Amulet. We'll dredge 4. Dart is good. That is pretty good. Now we grab green mana and cast Loam. So we have 3 mana, we have Inquiry, but we have 2 Phoenixes in our hand. Let's see if we can discard those Phoenixes. My opponent has their enchantment, so they drew a card, put Saga in play. My opponent is ramping, and we kind of need to go fast here. We don't have other choice. We need to go fast. If we try to go slow here, since my opponent had an Urza Saga and that's it, we can just cast a Looting instead of going Inquiry. But I don't think we have this time, so Inquiry it is. Dredge 4, Dredge 5, and Dredge 5. And this was pretty good here because we forced my opponent to discard the Titan again. But 2 lands, so we don't know if this is actually good enough. We will not win the game on turn 3, we'll need a turn 4, and now we found Talent on top. And this was a huge decision here. Do I keep Talent on top? It is one of our best cards, but at this point, is this what we want to win the game next turn? If we keep this on top, we will not dredge 5, so I decided to just put it into our graveyard. I would like to find our Conflagrate, or just another Dart, and then get back some Phoenixes to try to finish our opponent in the next turn. My opponent's Urza Saga went up, 2 counters. My opponent discarded 2 lands. Maybe they needed one of those lands. They played Vesuva, which is pretty good, and another enchantment. So my opponent doesn't have Titan yet. It seems that that Titan was what my opponent needed. Now they have Mirror Pool, and my opponent is passing. Guys, this is huge. My opponent needed that Titan, and we forced my opponent to discard it. I think. You can never be sure. And now we have Loam plus Conflagrate plus Dart, and I'm doing some math here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We have Letha, right? You can see by my cursor, the way my cursor is going there that I'm doing some math just to be sure. My opponent doesn't have blue mana to bounce one of my Phoenixes. So 3 lands back to my hand, and then I play my Mountain. Conflagrate, targeting my opponent's face for 6, discarding 2 Phoenixes. This is our second spell, and now 1 Dart and another Dart, and this is exactly lethal unless my opponent can deal with one of our Phoenixes somehow. They can't. Oof. And we won on game 3 against Amulet Titan. And every time Dredge wins against Titan, a new star born in the skies. Round 5, guys, and this is another great round. Hopefully you will enjoy watching this as much as I am enjoying, because I remember this round and this was spectacular. uh, like full of different events that you usually don't see in every match. So I'm analyzing here my starting hand of 6. This could work with some luck, but this is so much better, right? So let's keep this 5-card hand. We have 2 enablers, we have access to a surveil land on turn 1. Let's see if my opponent is playing a fast deck or a slow deck. Okay, Simic. Simic, it can be Neoform or all of weird combinations that sometimes have endurance in the main deck. So Inquisition is pretty good, but we don't have access to black yet, so let's put that into our graveyard. And now we cast Gaze on our upkeep, and suddenly we have so many good cards. Although Gaze is such a good tool in this deck to find us everything that we want. Stomping Ground, and I'll cast Looting here. But let's mix a Natural Draw with a Dredge, because this way, next turn, we have Burning Inquiry and Otherworldly Gaze. Or maybe Loam. My opponent has Bosejo. We cannot have Loam because we have a clear plan of finding just Oracle here. So this is a Birthing Ritual for my opponent. And as I was saying here, we can sometimes end with a Life from the Loam in our hand, but our reliable plan here is just casting Otherworldly Gaze. So we have a Phoenix there already. I chose to go slow here, and yeah, because I was expecting exactly that. My opponent's deck has Flare of Denial, sometimes Force of Negation, but Flare of Denial is a 4-off always, and my opponent wants to play cheap spells with redraws so they can find other combo pieces or reactive spells. This is not an aggro deck, but it has lots of creatures. So now we have something that can win the game on turn 4. But let's see what my opponent has. My opponent played Breeding Pool and Shardless Agent. Cascade Spell. You can see Endurance there, 2 Endurances. So let's hope that my opponent doesn't have a 3rd Endurance in their hand. And I will Dredge 3 here. I will still play slow as long as I can. Let's see if my opponent has other counter spells, because my opponent has 6 cards in their hand. Okay, Loam resolved. We have 1 Phoenix there. I decided that, okay, let's try Inquiry. We know that 2 Endurances are on the bottom of my opponent's deck, but they might have a counter spell here. Okay, they have a Flare of Denial. And since we already have a Loam going on, I decided that Surveil plus, or another Inquiry on top, that's pretty good. Let's kill Ice Fang here. And now we have 1 Phoenix flying free to attack my opponent down to 15. My opponent has Wooded Foothills, so they can shuffle back those Endurances in the deck, fetching for a Hedge Maze. Surveil land is good for us. And the Oculus. So now my opponent has a 5/5 blocker that puts several other small creatures without flying in play. Let's not get scared because of Oculus here, because we have Burning Inquiry, and we might have the win immediately here without talent. Again, let's see if we can win without Artist's talent. My opponent might have a counterspell here. If they do, they chose to not sacrifice the Oculus. We found 2 Creeping Chills. My opponent discarded 3 blue creatures, including Quantum Riddler. And now my opponent is down to 8. Let's cast Looting. Hopefully my opponent don't have a counterspell here. No. And we'll Dredge 10. 2 more Phoenixes there and 2 more Chills. So we have the win. Unless my opponent has Endurance. And it seems they don't have Endurance. We can win with a Dart, putting my opponent down to 1. Just as a statement. And now we will attack, dealing lethal damage with our Phoenixes. Just perfect deck building. Alright, we won game 1. And my opponent had an Endurance. The manifested creature was an Endurance. Indeed. Alright, so what now? What we can do against this deck? I don't have that much repetition against Simic Birthing Ritual, but I know this is not an aggro deck, but at some point my opponent will deploy an Oculus or another big boy, and we can lose the game. But they will control the game first, and they have Endurance in the main deck. So Inquisition is amazing because it will take almost every card from my opponent's hand. Even the largest creatures cost 3 mana. I decided to just submit the deck back. I think we are already pre-boarded. We could include maybe Surgical, maybe Lightning Axe, but let's see. Let's see how the game 2 will evolve. This is not especially good. I decided to mulligan this. This is better. We have an Inquisition, and we can find whatever we need with Otherworldly Gaze. We don't have a Dredger in this 6-card hand, but Gaze plus Inquiry plus maybe Surveil will probably find us a Dredger. My opponent kept 7 and started with Snow-Covered Island. We had one of the 4 single cards in our deck that we don't want to draw. That happens. So let's start with Inquisition of Kozilek. Show us your secrets opponent. And my opponent had an Endurance and 2 redraws, 2 small creatures that have a redraw, and Consign to Memory. Consign to Memory is pretty good against our deck, let's remember that. So my opponent had a redraw. They needed to use Boseiju as a land. So maybe they don't have that many lands. And now we cast Otherworldly Gaze. We found Dredger lands. We found everything here. We can put everything in our graveyard. We could try to be really lucky here and revive some of our Phoenixes, but I don't think we need to go that fast. We have a land, we have a solid plan for game 3, for turn 3, I mean. And now my opponent has Birthing Ritual. That changes the math of this game. With Birthing Ritual, my opponent can find Endurances so much faster. And they found something. It was a Harbinger of the Seas. And this is our first time seeing Harbinger in this matchup. Luckily we have Otherworldly Gaze, and we found a basic mountain on top, like a boss. So maybe if you can also hit a Lava Dart, if you can keep a Lava Dart on top at some point, we can kill Harbinger. So I kept the basic mountain on top. That means we could even try to be lucky here, just casting Inquiry as our second spell and finding Lava Darts to bring back some Phoenixes. But I decided to play slower here. My opponent is not threatening lethal, and I don't think my opponent wants to sacrifice a Harbinger here. They have only islands at the moment, so they can sacrifice the Homunculus, Philip, or something like that. Philip. I can call the Homunculus Philip. And now my opponent has just a Shardless Agent. And I'll draw. Talent is good. I let Talent on top, right? So now I have Talent. And this is another way to win the game. We can ultimate Talent to find Creeping Shields and Darts and win through extra damage. Just gives us another way to win the game. Birthing Ritual triggers. My opponent sacrifices the agent for Oculus. Now we don't have much time. My opponent has a 2/2 creature. I will dredge. We have another gaze there. So let's try here. Burning Inquiry. Let's see if Burning Inquiry is resolving or not. I'll discard the Loam and I'll dredge 4. We have more dredgers there. My opponent is putting Inquiry in our hand, back in our hand. So I can cast Otherworldly Gaze now. Discarding Phoenix. Dredging 5. Another chill is good. We have Dart there. And we found our second basic mountain in our entire deck on top. That means we can even kill the Harbinger next turn. Or maybe this turn. We could cast Lava Dart here to draw a card. We have the basic mountain, and then we can cast Burning Inquiry all this turn. Unfortunately, we need to think deeply here, because if I do that, I will sacrifice my basic mountain. And do I care about Harbinger, or I'll go face? I decided to go face, but this was pretty close. And thinking again, I think this wasn't the good idea. I should probably get rid of Harbinger. I will draw my mountain. I think this was a pretty good play. But if we don't find lethal here, we probably would need to have more mountains so we can sacrifice them to cast Lava Darts and going until the very bottom of our deck. So that was a mistake. Let's see if this was cost us the game or not. But as you can see, this was like a big brain move, right? I found a mountain. I sacrificed my first mountain to draw my second so I can cast the Burning Inquiry for the second time the same turn. And big brain moves like those are always great. And now this is resolving. So dredge 5, another chill is good. Dredge 5 and dredge 5. We dredged 15, my opponent to go down to 10. But unfortunately, we don't have lethal. We have more darts here. If I had the choice to target Harbinger at that moment, we could kill Harbinger, and now we could probably win here with enough Phoenixes. But now we need to be very lucky here with this last dart and draw and dredge 5 and dredge exactly more 3 damage. So far we have only 3 Phoenixes. We don't have lethal. My opponent has a blocker. My opponent is contemplating our move here and trying to understand what's going on. And I think my opponent now has a Force of Negation after our Burning Inquiry. So we will dredge, and we found another dart. You see, our last Phoenix and probably a last chill was on the bottom of our deck. Now we need to attack, of course, but now my opponent will have more chances to find an Endurance and win the game from there. My opponent draws. And my opponent thought for a long time here, until deciding to attack first. We are down to 13, and now Breathing Ritual triggers. One thing that I thought here is that maybe my opponent need a green mana, right? Because Harbinger is putting my opponent in a weird situation where they only have blue mana available. My opponent is not casting cards. But if my opponent kills Harbinger here, we'll have the win with our remaining darts. So they chose to not destroy any of their creatures. But we don't have more ways to win this game now, unfortunately. I drew Artist's Talent, and we have our last Phoenix there. That would be enough to win the game, but now we cannot win anymore. And I conceded game 2. But this was very educational for me. That move of casting Lava Dart to draw naturally with Artist's Talent, using Otherworldly Gaze as a way to control the top of your deck. I felt like understanding something new about my own deck, which was an amazing feeling. And now going for game 3, we are on the play. And again, no changes. I think our deck is already pre-sideboarded. My opponent's tools against us are mostly Endurance and counterspells. Well, this is not good enough, and this is also not good enough. My opponent kept 7, we are going to 5. This is a keep, but not a good keep. We need to find something with our Scouting Turn. If we find a land on top, this might be good. My opponent had Wooded Foothills. We will crack Scouting Turn here for Commercial District. We need lands. We don't find land, so we have a natural draw here. And we found a land. Great. Right on time. Now we'll bring back that land, unless my opponent has a Force of Negation. It resolved. Now we have 3 lands for next turn. Next turn we have Loan plus Inquiry. My opponent has a Surveil land. Kept the card on top. My opponent kept 7 cards. Kept the card on top, so not the best of the worlds here. Basic Forest for my opponent. Basic Forest means that my opponent might be reaching a spot to cast Harbinger of the Seas. My opponent kept the card on top again, so let's dredge. We have 1 dart. Now it's quite interesting here because we have a way to destroy my opponent's Coiling Oracle in a way that my opponent will not cast a Flare of Denial if they have it. I decided to cast Loam first, and now I'll destroy Coiling Oracle, so if my opponent has Flare of Denial, they cannot stop us from casting Burning Inquiry. If this is Force of Negation, it's okay, but if it was Flare of Denial, and now it's resolving, so it seems that my opponent probably had Flare of Denial, and they had Endurance, and they discarded Endurance, Ice Fang, and Shardless Agent. You never know if this was on top of your opponent's deck or in their hand, but my opponent discarded Endurance, and this is awesome, because now we have 2 Arclight Phoenixes coming back on turn 3. My opponent will go down to 6, and they are already facing lethal. They need something. If they play Harbinger here, they lose. So being on the play with this deck is so good. If you have some expertise playing fast decks, aggro decks, you'll feel at home playing Phoenix Dredge. So my opponent play Ice Fang Coatl, draws a card, plays Boseiju. This is just a blocker, but we have Lava Dart, right? So we can just kill the Coatl and attack for lethal in the air. My opponent drew a card, played Wooded Foothills. So I decided to cast Otherworldly Gaze first. My opponent is thinking this might indicate that they have Flare of Denial, as I was expecting last turn. And we have a Looting on top, which is pretty good. I drew my Faithless Looting, I cast Lava Darts targeting Ice Fang Coatl, but I know that my opponent, now that they have a second creature, they can counter that with Flare of Denial or Force of Negation. So the right move would be doing that on my opponent's turn, but this gives me an opportunity to bring back another Phoenix this turn, since we already cast a spell. This is our 3rd spell this turn. We did cast Otherworldly Gaze, Lava Dart, and now Faithless Looting. My opponent is countering that, so okay, you have a blocker. Now they are down to 3. We still have 2 Phoenixes. My opponent cracks Wooded Foothills for a basic forest. They don't have Surveil lands anymore. They desperately moved to Shardless Agents. They found an Ice Fang Coatl, 3 cards in their hand. And now it's our turn. So I chose to dredge and found a Creeping Chill. Do you have an Endurance, opponent? Right on time, because we needed some chills this game. And my opponent has consigned to memory, last resource. Now I'll bring back some lands, casting Loam, because if we find a dart on top with our Commercial District, we can even destroy Ice Fang. But no dart, but I feel like we have the win here. My opponent has only 1 untapped forest. And this is it. We had the win. This was a little bit messy, but now we are getting close. Round 6, guys. We are paired against RespectTheCat. Maybe that means my opponent's playing Energy. Cat deck. I kept this medium 6 here. We need some lands. as usual, but my opponent has Godless Shrine, so no cats. And Thoughtseize. So Talent is my best card here, but maybe my opponent will target Inquiry, because we obviously need more lands. And not only that, maybe my opponent has a stacked hand. We found another land, so let's play it. This is a tapped land. Inquisition. I thought for a long time here, and I decided to keep the card on top. Because if this is a white-black deck, maybe an Esper deck, the Inquisition might be what we need. Maybe not for this turn, but definitely for the next turn. So I chose Steam Vents here, and went with Artist Talent, trying to do the most powerful thing that our deck can do. Since we are playing from behind here, my opponent has Watery Grave. That means Fedia, Exuberant Shepherd, the beautiful Tongi Dog. And now Quantum Riddler. So my opponent is doing their thing. They are drawing cards, getting some triggers, getting lands, but they are already down to 13 thanks to their own lands. This deck deals so much damage to themselves. So Life from the Loam here as our first spell, and we can discard a Dredger and Dredge 4. We found a Phoenix. Our Blood Crypt, unfortunately, is on our graveyard, so we must pass here and wait one more turn to do something. My opponent had basic Plains and a second Riddler, and now Emperor of Bones. This is pretty bad for us. My opponent chose Phoenix there and attacks, blinking the second Riddler again, so they will draw one extra card. My opponent's doing their thing. We are already down to 7. Surveil, chill. All right, we are up to 10, and my opponent is down to 10. But now we need to think a little bit here. Which move is better? We have Dredge 3, and now we found our extra chill. My opponent is down to 7. My opponent has 1 blocker, so I can cast Looting Dart, putting my opponent down to 5, and hoping that this is enough to reach 2 more Phoenixes. If I just cast Loam to put some lands back to my hand, I think my opponent will just kill me with their creatures, so we need to go for it. Unfortunately, we don't have Dredgers in our graveyard, so we put a Dredger just with talent. We couldn't find another Dredger, so this is a moment where you must think here and do the right choice of going for it. And with Faithless Looting on the stack, you just sacrifice your lands for your darts. This way we can find your Dredgers and find whatever you need to win the game. My opponent is already down to 2. We found 1 Phoenix so far, Dredge 5, and Creeping Chill will win us the game. This is how this deck works. We won game 1. And as I say here frequently, we are favored to win against Blink decks. And they are the hottest decks at the moment in Modern. As usual, good Dredge decks in every format usually have great plan, great game against the tier 1 decks. And this is exactly what's happening here. We have Lightning Axe here, and since we are winning, and we saw Emperor of Bones, I thought that, well, maybe we can try something different here. Maybe we can include... we know that this deck usually have Surgical Extractions, right? And we don't need talent to win, especially on the draw. I know that my opponent will include some answers to enchantments or more answers to permanents, which includes Prismatic Ending and sometimes even other cards. I saw Wear Tear these days. So let's try to win on the draw without talent, but more answers to creatures. And I kept this hand. This is not that good, but we have lands and we have an answer to a fast creature here in Lava Dart, if my opponent has something. Okay, we have our Phoenix, and that's weird because we have 2 Phoenixes already. Looting is good, but we don't have Dredgers. And this is one of the rare cases when I look at my hand here and I see that, well, we can bring back some Phoenixes even without Dredgers. We can just be a 4-color Phoenix deck. If we don't find Dredgers, we might revive some Phoenixes anyways. And this is a great example because we can kill Emperor of Bones with Lava Dart this turn. My opponent had no good targets there. But let's see if this is actually the case. Let's see. We have 2 Phoenixes. My opponent is down to 18. So Faithless Looting, we found even another Dart. So since we don't have Dredgers, it's a tempting thing to do here, just going for it, right? Like, make the opponent have Solitude. They might have kept this hand because of Emperor of Bones, and they let me destroy Emperor of Bones, and now we can attack dealing 6 damage in the air. So my opponent is already down to 12. Let's see if they don't have any Solitudes, I mean, in the previous turn. So let's see if we can win here, or if they have another answer. We don't need to protect our graveyard for more than a single turn if we have Phoenixes instead of other threats. That's the beauty of Arclight Phoenix in Dredge. My opponent played Witch Blast middle, untapped, And we have an answer for that Flicker Wisp. My opponent played this just as a blocker, but we have an answer. So at first I thought for a moment, well, I played the untapped land here to cast Inquiry, but then I thought, well, maybe I don't want to cast Inquiry here because my opponent's hand is so bad, right? They kept that hand because of Emperor of Bones, but they don't have anything else. So it seems that we just have the advantage here. My opponent needs to deal with both Phoenixes. And they found a Solitude, finally. So they are destroying one Phoenix, but no Ephemerate. And now Boggart Bog, tapped, and Quantum Riddler. My opponent had Boggart Bog, which is good against our deck, but again, we were so fast that Bog wasn't enough, and we won round 6, guys. And at this point of the tournament, we are 5-1, and we are so close to enter the top 8. Round 7, if we win, we enter the top 8 because we started 4th. And even if we lose, considering the standings there, I think we will enter the top 8 even if we lose. We are on the play. And this is a good hand. This is not broken yet because we have only one Dredger, or worst Dredger. But Dart can be good against fast creatures. Phoenix is what we want to do. So let's keep it. And it's a close thing here between Phoenix and the third land, because we can just shuffle Phoenix back and find it naturally. I decided to keep Phoenix instead of the land since we have Loam, and I played Wooded Foothills and passed, holding Dart or Surveil Land. My opponent has Steam Vents untapped and play the Swift Spear, the Human Monk. So this is a Prowess deck finally, and my deck here that we are seeing, it's a meta call against Prowess decks. We found a second artist talent because Prowess is slightly more aggressive than our deck, right? They are more resilient, they have so many creatures, they are more redundant than our deck. But we have life gain, and the Prowess decks with Surgical Extraction, sometimes in the main deck, those decks were the reason why I chose Inquisition of Kozilek instead of Thoughtseize. Before starting this tournament, I had 3-4 ones in a row, and every time I lost to Prowess decks because I had Thoughtseize instead of Inquisition. Sometimes you lose by 1 point of life or 2 life points, 2 life of difference. And this time I decided, no, I will play Inquisition of Kozilek because I don't want to lose to Prowess that easily again. And then I started winning against Prowess. So this is not easy here because we are already down to 10 life and we have only one Phoenix there, so it will not be easy to win. This Dart is our second spell. I decided to kill the Monk instead of going face because my opponent is ahead of here. We'll just bring back one Phoenix and it will stay on defense for a single turn. My opponent preordains, which usually means a good thing. If they don't have lethal here, we can cast Talent, Dart, and maybe win the game. But my opponent has lethal with Lava Dart. They found a Lava Dart after that preordain, probably. And now they can kill Phoenix and just attack for lethal. Or not? Yes, lethal because they have an extra spell. And this is what I was talking about, how redundant Prowess decks are compared to ours. We have a strong finish. We go to from 0 to 10 in a just single turn, but my opponent is pretty redundant with so many creatures and spells. So against Prowess, especially after sideboarding, I tested a new approach, which means zero talent, and instead we can include Lightning Axe and Conflagrate. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work, but I don't want to lose to a fast 9/2 creature in the air. For example, I want to have more answers, and sometimes we have talent, like in the previous game, talent on the play, and it wasn't enough to win the game. So I decided to keep this. Conflagrate is good on turn 2 on the play, but I decided to play slow here because I want to cast Gaze first. No, yeah, and that's exactly why. Playing against this deck, after sideboarding, they usually come back more control-ish than aggro, with several counterspells. Let's see if my opponent has a counterspell here. Yeah, they decided to counter our Otherworldly Gaze, maybe thinking that we need to resolve that. We don't. We have more lands here. So let's play Blood Crypt and 50. And now, again, let's go for it. Since we have more lands, 2 Phoenixes on turn 2. My opponent is down to 10. Is that good enough to win the game? Good thing is that Prowess versus Phoenix Dredge versus Prowess usually is a fast matchup, right? Nobody will get tired of, hopefully. My opponent is trying to understand what happened here. And they took the damage down to 10. And they play Artemisa, cracked it for a basic mountain now, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Mishra's Bubble. This Channeler might be a 3/3 flying this turn. My opponent needs to... yeah, they found a sorcery. For us, it's a blocker because we are ahead, and we can even cast Inquisition of Kozilek here if we find a life from the low, and we didn't. So this is probably just Otherworldly Gaze. I decided to cast it before attacking here, and this was good because now we know that we have a Lightning Axe on top. This Creeping Shove is pretty good for us. If my opponent has Surgical Extraction, this is the best target for them. They don't want to lose life for free here, and they might have answers to our Phoenixes. But no, my opponent is down to 6. So let's attack. My opponent blocked 1 Phoenix, and we have lethal in the air for next turn. My opponent doesn't know that we have a Conflagrate in our hand, so even if they destroy our Phoenixes, our Phoenix will just win with Conflagrate. They kept 1 card on top, Steam Vent stepped, we drew Lightning Axe, I played the land, I cracked the land. Nope, we don't need to crack the land, we can just go to attack, and if my opponent has an answer to a Phoenix, they need to fire it now, and then we just win with Conflagrate. Yeah, they had a Lightning Bolt, and now we just win. Second copy of Conflagrate, pretty good against aggro decks like Prowess. So this is what I mean when I say that Artist's talent is not that good against Prowess, especially on the draw like we are going to see on game 3. That's why I will probably keep talent outside of the deck in the sideboard. And Into the Flood Maw sometimes is tempting because your opponent can go all in to buff a single creature or 2, and then you just bounce it. And that's why I chose to include Into the Flood Maw instead of 2 Inquisitions. But because Inquisition, well, it's good when your opponent had exactly a Surgical Extraction or something like that. But if they don't, you just wish you had another removal spell, right? This hand is interesting because we have access to all of the colors of our mana. My opponent kept 6 cards on the play. This is sort of a 6-card hand because Creeping Shield is useless in our hand here. But we have an answer against a possible Surgical Extraction or a Core Steel Cutter or something like that. My opponent has a Scalding Tarn and cracks it for Steam Vents, untapped, down to 17. Dragon's Rage Channeler, where are our darts? Into the Flood Maw is a good answer, but I decided to probably go with Inquisition first, right? This way we can know better how to proceed next turn. If my opponent has Surgical Extraction, though, they don't. They only have Preordain and Mutagenic Growth, so I decided to take Preordain. And at this moment, I feel pretty good to win this game. My opponent doesn't have a second creature, but they found a Preordain on top of their deck. This will help them to find something else. They play Artemisa and attack dealing just 1 damage. So this is it. We have Into the Flood Maw, Survey Land, or Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent plays the basic mountain. We know about Mutagenic Growth. Let's see if my opponent will fire it now. Only 2 cards in their hand. Oh, Lava Dart. They found a Lava Dart in the graveyard. And that's good because now they don't need to cast Mutagenic Growth this turn. They can wait for the next turn. Since this is far from lethal, I decided to just take the damage and grab probably a Survey Land here. We need to find something, and we don't want to take damage. This is not something. I drew a card here, and this was maybe a misclick because it was obviously the right choice to just cast Otherworldly Gaze on my upkeep. I remember being pretty tired at this point, and I passed the upkeep to draw step too fast here, clicking, and this might cost me the game. I decided to cast Into the Flood Maw in the main phase here. It worked. Just because if my opponent has an answer to my Otherworldly Gaze or to my Burning Inquiry, it would not trigger their creature. Lightning Axe is a good one, but it is also a defensive thing to do. I decided to keep it on top just in case something goes wrong. If my opponent has a counterspell for this Burning Inquiry, we have a Lightning Axe on top. We don't have Dredgers yet, so we'll draw, and we might end with a Lightning Axe in our hand. We have 50% chances to keep any card in our hand now. Okay, my opponent had Spell Pierce the whole time. And now they have Mutagenic Growth and Darcy. That means they just have the win here. And as I said, I don't think I played this game perfectly. I think some of my choices were not that good. But this was a pretty good warming up because as you're gonna see on the next round, we'll enter the top 8 and we'll fight the same person. So let's see if we can do better after this round. Top 8, guys, as you can see here, we did it. The first opponent that won against us also did it on the last place. And now we are on the draw against the same Prowess opponent, but our hand is pretty powerful here. And now I'm feeling better to try to win this game. My opponent had no turn 1 play, We unfortunately drew a Creeping Chill, but we have 4 enablers in our hand, and enablers is everything a Phoenix Dredge want to have. My opponent has a Thundering Falls. They don't want Darcy. They might need some lands, maybe, because Darcy is a good card. Fairy Islet and Cory Steelcutter and Mishra's Bauble. All right, so my opponent has a plan, but it was slightly slower because they didn't have a turn 1 creature. So even a redundant deck like Prowess sometimes don't have everything, right? And now it's our time here. We have a Lava Dart already there, so choices, right? I don't think my opponent can win next turn, but this is always possible when you think about Prowess, so let's guarantee your basic mountain here, inflicting less damage to ourselves, just the fetch land. My opponent is tapped, so no Spell Pierces, and I think they only have Spell Pierce in the sideboard anyways. So this was our first spell this turn, turn 2. And now what? I decided to go for the most aggressive play, which is Burning Inquiry. So Dredge 5, and Dredge 5, Dredge 15. And we have several Phoenixes there. My opponent discarded 3 spells, Bolt, Dart, and Cory Steelcutter. But this was pretty aggressive. But my opponent is already down to 2. We have 3 Phoenixes, so let's go for our most aggressive start against Phoenix. And again, without Artist's Talent. Talent is amazing in this build, but please don't mulligan until you find talent. You can win lots of games without Artist's Talent. So now my opponent is virtually on 1 because we have a Lava Dart, right? We are putting my opponent down to 2. They cannot tap Fairy Islet anymore. And we are up to 20, so this feels pretty good. It's sort of a turn 2 win, not on the life total, but enough to guarantee your win. My opponent is casting Lightning Bolt, doing their best to create some threats, but they can't tap Fiery Islet. If they do, they lose. They are doing their best, but our Creeping Chills put us up to 20, and now they tapped the Islets to cast Violent Urge, so they could have lethal here, but we had enough to win. On the draw, so this was huge, guys. Now we just need to win one more game to enter the top 4. And as I did before, no talent against Prowess, we just need more spells. But in the last round, in round 7, I chose to include on game 3 some copies of Into the Flood Maw on the draw. And this time I decided that no, I just want to include 2 Axes and 1 Conflagrate instead of the talents. Okay, this is not a good hand. 4 lands, Creeping Chill, no. This is slightly better. We again have a game plan here that might be just bringing back some Phoenixes fast. But we are on the draw again. We won the last game. We have a Dart, which can be good against turn 1 Darcy. But this is not a beautiful hand, and I will probably just put 1 Phoenix or 1 Dredger back. I decided to put the Dredger back, and my opponent played Wooded Foothills. Now we have an Inquisition of Kozilek. Considering my opponent keeping 7 cards on the play without a turn 1 play, this time this is very suspicious, so I decided to start with Inquisition here. And my opponent is thinking here for a long time, and they had Surgical Extraction finally. So Inquisition of Kozilek against Prowess finally doing some heavy lift here on game 2 in our top 8 round. My opponent is just plotting the show off. And now they don't have a great hand. And that's why we can even reanimate 2 Phoenixes immediately, like we did previously. Just to put my opponent immediately down to 11. They don't have a flyer to block. They can cast the plotted Slick Shot here as a blocker if they want to. But we are ahead. We are ahead on the draw again against Prowess without dredging. It's important to remember that what we want to do is win the game. Sometimes you don't need to dredge to win the game, or you don't need to focus on dredging if you already have enough tools. And we are playing against a deck that now doesn't have counter spells, doesn't have removal spells, just a blocker, Slick Shot, show off. But my opponent decided to attack, trusting that we will not have lethal anytime soon. Let's cast our Inquisition of Kozilek that we had on top of our deck. My opponent is countering that with Spell Pierce. We know the last 2 cards of my opponent's hand. So I decided to play Thundering Falls here to see the top card. We don't need this basic mounting. And now it was the most important decision this game. Do we attack or not? We can put my opponent down to 6, threatening lethal damage in the next turn. But my opponent can easily put us down to 5, 8, 9, or maybe more if they top deck a Lightning Bolt or any buff spell. I decided to attack because every time we decided to keep Phoenixes on defense, it kind of doesn't work. Your opponent just destroy your Phoenix and you cannot bring them back after that. So let's assume this is a race. My opponent is down to 4, not down to 6, down to 4. And now they play the Islet and they drew a card. And you know what that means, desperation. They need something. They found Expressive Iteration, that's a good one. But my opponent cannot play lands anymore. So they need free spells here. They need Mutagenic Growth or maybe Surgical Extraction to buff their creatures enough to win this game. If they can't find something here, they will probably attack with the Monk token and show off to block. Alright, and that's exactly what's happening. So any Lava Dart or Creeping Chill here is good, and we found Lightning Axe from our sideboard. So unless my opponent has some Force of Negation or something like that, and they don't, we just win the game. 2-0 against our Nemesis in the top 8. My opponent stopped a little bit, probably thinking if they have a way to protect show off. Maybe they have something. This was a long minute here, just waiting to see what my opponent could do to save themselves. But the answer is nothing. And we have lethal in the air. 2-0 against Prowess. And now we'll go to our top 4. Let's do it. Top 4, guys, we are paired against SaculSueahtam. And we are on the draw. And this is a good hand. We need one more land, but we have so much action here. We can kill a small creature, or we can just cast Looting and then Inquiry, finding lands. We are on the draw. We draw one extra card here. Let's see. My opponent has Arid Mesa, cracking it for Sacred Foundries, so maybe Boros Energy again. Yeah, Ragavan. It can be energy, but also a control deck these days. Creeping Chill again. Not a good draw. It happens here on model. We can draw Creeping Chill on turn 2 a lot. Let's destroy Ragavan here on their turn. And my opponent cracks Marsh Flats for basic planes. So Boros Energy confirmed. My opponent is going to the second main phase to cast Voice of Victory. Alright. That's a good spell, but if we find lands here, and we found one, we might have enough tools to win the game. We can cast Inquiry here, but I think Inquisition is safer. We were on the draw after all. And my opponent had Ajani and Ocelot Pride. Both good cards. I decided to take Ajani because my opponent doesn't have ways to gain life now. And we can always kill Ocelot Pride with our Lava Dart that we have in our graveyard or in our hand. My opponent played Arid Mesa, they have the Pride and something else. So my opponent's hand with Ragavan, Ajani, Pride, and Voice of Victory, pretty good hand, but only creatures, right? No answers, no removal spells, no exciting effects, no Goblin Bombardment, only creatures. And now my opponent has a Goblin Bombardment, probably the best card they could draw in their entire deck, because now they can deal 4 free damage to us every turn with the Warrior tokens, and Goblin Bombardment throwing the tokens in our face. I'm sorry. And now we need something good here, guys, because this top deck was pretty good for my opponent. I top decked Artist's Talent, but I don't think we can play it, unfortunately. We will just lose to our opponent's triggers next turn if we play Talent here. So let's go with Inquiry instead. Dredge 4, Dredge 5, more talents. I mean, more darts, and Dredge 4. And my opponent had Static Prison now and Seasoned Pyromancer on top of their deck. But again, how can we win from here? My opponent has a Bombardment and a Voice of Victory. We don't have enough lands or removal spells. We would need a third dart. So maybe you can cast Otherworldly Gaze next turn, finding a land, cashing in all the darts to destroy Voice of Victory, bringing back one Phoenix. This is a plan. Not a good one. But if my opponent has a blank in their hand, this actually might work. So I decided to cast Otherworldly Gaze, yeah. Or maybe I decided to be lucky and top deck. No. I'm doing some math here. Yeah, I decided to cast Otherworldly Gaze. It's the right call here. My opponent has one card in their hand. We found Talent, Gaze, and Steam Vents. All of them good cards. We need a land, so we can destroy Voice of Victory. This land can enter the battlefield tapped. But then we'll just have no lands here. And because of that, we had some bad variance with that Burning Inquiry finally, and we ended with all of our Dredgers in our hand. So we cannot keep any of those cards, unfortunately. We need to cast 3 darts to destroy Voice of Victory. So I kept only the land on top. But this is a desperation move, right? If at least we had one extra Phoenix, or maybe if we had found one extra Chill. But it is what it is. We needed to destroy my opponent's Voice of Victory. We are down to 3 now. We have 1 Phoenix. Can this single Phoenix finish the game in our favor? My opponent is down to 12. Guide of Souls for my opponent. And we'll have a draw here. Looting. Looting is actually pretty good if we find a land on top. We cannot attack here, because if we attack, my opponent will just win the game, right? So let's keep Phoenix to block Guide of Souls. My opponent draws Arena of Glory. They have one card in their hand. Nothing good. We are kind of doing it. We drew Stomping Ground. I decided to play it tapped because my opponent has a Goblin Bombardment, right? If I play untapped, my opponent deal 1 damage and win the game immediately. But can we find enough tools to win this weird game after destroying 3 lands just to take down Voice of Victory? My opponent plays Seasoned Pyromancer with haste, and now they have 3 tokens. And for a moment I thought that we could win the game because we needed one more turn here to cast Looting and maybe finding chills and put us on a healthy life total. But now my opponent can just throw creatures on us to win the game with Bombardment. I block here, but it doesn't matter. And my opponent wins. So we lost game 1 on the draw. We had bad variance with our lands, but it was actually closer than expected here because my opponent had an excellent top deck on Goblin Bombardment. My opponent was Hellbent, and then they drew Goblin Bombardment when they needed. It was exactly what they needed to win the game with Voice of Victory. Now what? On the play against my opponent, I decided to just submit the deck back. I think we are already pre-boarded, and being on the play, especially because we have Inquisition of Kozilek instead of Thoughtseize, if we find an Inquisition to take cards from my opponent's deck, this will not put us down to 15 life on turn 1, which might be a pretty bad thing against an aggro deck like Energy. And that's it. Game 2, we need to win 2 games in a row. This is a good hand. We don't have green mana yet. We might need green mana here. I decided to start with my Surveil land. Looting is a good card. Let's keep it on top. We can cast 2 Lootings and even 1 Dart next turn. My opponent has Aridimisa, Krakenate, Sacred Foundry, and Pride. Pride is good. We can kill that creature. But we still need something here. So let's cast Looting. And we found 2 extra lands, everything we needed, so we can maybe win the game on turn 3 or maybe on turn 4. And we need to deal with the Ocelot Pride. But let's see, my opponent might have something even better. Ragavan with Dash, for example, would be better to kill. So my opponent played the basic mounting and just attack, so we know what to do. Stomping Ground, untapped, and Lava Dart the cat. Meow. And we won. No, not yet. Let's not celebrate. My opponent will definitely have more creatures. Ajani. So Ajani is a good card, but not that good against us unless my opponent has a Goblin Bombardment going on. So I'm pretty confident that we can win next turn here, but I don't remember what happened after my opponent. Okay, my opponent had a Surgical Extraction, targeting Stink with Imp. Our best Dredger. So this is maybe rushed, right? My opponent's best target is not my Dredger. But that means that my opponent needs to have more information about my hand. This will put a break on our next actions, since we don't have Dredge 5 available in our deck anymore. But we can definitely win without Stink with Imp, especially because we have Talent in Faithless Looting in our hand. And we have a Dart there. So let's do it. Talent, Looting, always yield to that. And we can Dredge 4 here because we found Great Thug, we found 1 Phoenix. And do I want to cast that Dart now? Probably. Facing my opponent. And now we'll Dredge 4 again. We found another Creeping Chill. Since we have less Dredgers, this Looting, even after dredging once more, might fail. Yeah, we had Golgari Thug exactly on top, but we found another Creeping Chill, which is good. And now I decided to go face again, trying to hit something else. Another Dart. Excellent. I'm going all in, targeting my opponent before they found another Surgical. And we found what we needed. We could not find what we needed, but we found exactly lethal with our last Lava Dart triggering Artist's Talent. This could gone wrong, but we did it. We did it. And now being on the draw, I have the same feeling that I have against Prowess all the time. I don't think talents are especially good on the draw. My opponent can put so many goodies on the battlefield on turn 2. So I don't think we have time to deploy talent unless my opponent's hand is especially slow. And that's why I'm not playing talent on the draw. This is a keep. This is slow, but we have answers to small creature, we have answers to my opponent's hand, and we have Dredger, and we have lands, and we have enablers. So this is a keep. We draw a Phoenix. We even have Phoenix now. So let's start with Inquisition, because if my opponent has Surgical Extraction, we'll already take that from their hand. Okay, no Surgicals, 2 Ragavans, that's good to know. Let's take the second Guide of Souls. My opponent's hand is not that good. My opponent needs a little bit of luck with that Ragavan. Let's see if my opponent will play a Ragavan with Dash, or just Ragavan and something else they have. Ragavan with Dash. Alright, so my opponent is ramping. Let's see if Ragavan will take something good from us. Ragavan took our Lava Dart, which could be good, but we have another one. And we'll have a natural draw here. I would love to draw. Okay, my opponent, oh yeah, my opponent decided to go all in on Ragavans. This way, they will put 1 extra card in their graveyard to cast Flage on turn 4 if they find lands. But now we have a way to destroy Ragavan, and we can even cast Inquisition here. If we put Flage in my opponent's graveyard, that's fine, because I don't expect to see Flage coming back soon. My opponent needs 2 more mana, and we'll definitely kill Ragavan this turn. So yeah, let's take a turn 2 to do exactly that. Oh, my opponent had another Ragavan. That explains a little bit what we are seeing here. That's why my opponent chose to cast a second Ragavan. What would you do, guys? Would you take Flage here and let your opponent cast Ragavans freely while you do your stuff? You can kill both Ragavans with Dart and Dart. Or you just take the second Ragavan here so you can focus on other stuff instead of killing Ragavans and dealing that turn after turn. I decided to take Ragavan there because my opponent definitely needs the mana. And Flage is pretty far here. My opponent needs to top deck 2 lands in a row to cast Flage from their graveyard. So I decided to do that. And in case my opponent draws the 4th Ragavan, let's do it on my opponent's combat phase. So the basic mountain here, and we kill the 3rd Ragavan. My opponent can attack dealing 1 damage. And my opponent has Goblin Bombardment, so we know exactly what my opponent has in their hand. And now we have a Burning Inquiry here. We unfortunately couldn't find an untapped land, but this might still be good. Since my opponent doesn't have lands, it's fine to cast a Burning Inquiry here. We don't need to keep that Inquisition. My opponent is almost hellbent. I can also kill Guide of Souls immediately, since we have Life from the Loam, and that was exactly my line. So no more life gain for you. My opponent doesn't have creatures, only 2 lands. They can't cast Flage unless they top deck a land. And they are down to 15, we are down to 12. My opponent passed back, so no 3rd land for my opponent. Ragavans were pretty good and important for them. And now we have a chill. So this was a strategic way to try to win, but my opponent top decks Surgical Extraction, targeting Creeping Chills. And this will put a break on our winning here. I was expecting to win this on this turn 4. We can still deal lots of damage to my opponent, but we'll probably not win this turn. Let's see if we find one of our Conflagrates with this Burning Inquiry. So this was our first spell. Now we will cast our second spell, Dredge 3, Dredge 4, Dredge 5. A second Phoenix is good. My opponent discarded Flage, so we don't know what my opponent has in their hand. I decided to not bring back that Phoenix yet, because next turn we can cast Looting and win the game. Seasoned Pyromancer for my opponent, that's fine. My opponent drew 2 cards, so no tokens for them. And now Dredge 5. And now we can probably just win the game if we find another Phoenix. Dredge 5, Conflagrate, Dredge 4. We found a Phoenix. And now we have Lethal. And this was a great game. I feel like, again, I learned a little bit more about my own deck here on that sequence, killing Ragavan after Ragavan before my opponent have some mana. Identifying what my opponent needs and negating them. And now we'll go to the final round. Final round, guys. I was so excited here. My opponent was also excited here. We talked a little bit before start the matchup. And we are on the play this time. If you remember, this is our opponent from round 3, AlphaGo. We lost 0-2 against them. They were playing Boros Energy. But we won against Boros Energy in the previous round, and now we are on the play, so I'm feeling good. Let's see. Ragavan, Voice of Victory, Johnny Flage. Again, only creatures. I decided to take Ragavan here just to put a break on my opponent's best turn 1 play, because our hand is a slow hand. We need to resolve this Life from the Loam and then find something with Otherworldly Gaze on turn 3. We have a slower hand. But then we found a Faithless Looting. Loam is still our best play here because we don't have a 3rd land. And this way we'll put a Dredger in our graveyard. Next time we can cast Looting and Otherworldly Gaze, or maybe Looting and Loam. Or maybe Loam and Gaze. We have many options. Let's see what my opponent has. My opponent has Voice of Victory. We knew about that. We cannot cast spells during their turn. Let's cast everything on our turn. We found our first Phoenix. No second Dredger yet. So let's see what I did. We can cast Loam plus Gaze or Loam plus Looting, let's say. Even Loam plus Surveil Land is not the worst here. So I played Arid Mesa, cracked it for a basic mounting, alright. And now I took those lands back, and then Faithless Looting. Alright, so I took the aggressive line, and we found more good cards to chain Dredgers that we could bring back one Phoenix, but since my opponent has a Flage going on turn 3, this doesn't seem like a good idea. On the next turn, though, we have a Conflagrate. Conflagrate, Loam plus Conflagrate on turn 2, or on turn 4. Loam Dart Conflagrate might be good. Loam or Gaze, or just Looting and Surveil Land if we find a second Darter and more Phoenixes. We have some options. We are down to 14, but all the damage was caused by our own lands. My opponent thought for a long time here. They played a Ring of Glory and a Giant. Alright, and that's it. My opponent attacks with Voice of Victory, dealing 3 damage, and passed the turn. Okay, so I decided to dredge 5 here. We have 3 darts. We can kill Voice of Victory again with 3 lava darts, but only 1 Phoenix. We have Conflagrate. What's the better choice here? What would you do? You who is watching here this humble video, what would you do? Considering that we are almost half of our deck now, we can cast Looting plus Gaze plus Dart. We can cast Loam plus Conflagrate to kill creatures. What would you do? I decided to cast Looting. Dredge 4, we found 1 Chill. And Dredge 4, we found our 4th Dart. So we are back to 14, but not amazing here. Let's cast Otherworldly Gaze. We want to hit more, something more. Unfortunately, only lands on top this time. And I will cast Lava Dart targeting my opponent's Cat Warrior here. If my opponent flips a Journey, I can attack a Journey with my Arclight Phoenix, unless they have a removal spell. They have a removal spell, but that's okay. We are not in a bad position for next turn. We still have Life from the Loam plus Conflagrate, but I feel we just need to find more Phoenixes and Chills. They are hiding on the bottom of our deck. Our Otherworldly Gaze unfortunately didn't find what we need this time. Or we can just dredge 5 and then dredge 10 or 9 with Faithless Looting, trying to hit our Phoenixes and Chills. My opponent plays Flooded Strand. They have Flage and 2 unknown cards in their hand, and played a Ragavan with Dash. We cannot kill it because of Voice of Victory. And let's see what Ragavan will take from our deck. Otherworldly Gaze, that's alright. And the Journey goes up. We are down to 2. And my opponent has Flage to finish us. So a great sequence from my opponent here. Our deck couldn't keep up with my opponent was doing. We unfortunately lost game 1. And now going for game 2, I decided to keep the same configuration as we did in the previous matchup against Boros Energy. I remember being pretty tired here. As you can see here, it was almost evening, right? Several hours of gameplay. And at some point here, I decided, well, we just need to find a good starting hand to finish this fast, right? If we try to go to turn 4 or 5 against Energy, my opponent will probably just win. So let's try to win this fast. We have tools to win this fast. I remember going for game 2 with this Energy. We need to find not a broken hand necessarily, but we need to find a better synergy and not just one Looting and one Loam and hope for the best. So let's see what we will find. Talent, Inquiry, Stink with Imp, Snapkeep. We even have Loam, so we can find our second and third lands to win on turn 3. This hand is amazing. We'll definitely win with this hand. We have our combo, we just need lands. So I started with Arid Mesa. This will be a Steam Vent, so we need to resolve Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent cracked Flooded Strand, Sacred Foundry, and Ragavan, the best monkey pirate. And we have Steam Vents and cast Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent also kept 7 cards. We found our second land and Looting. So we could keep here land, Looting and land, so we can play Artist's Talent and then Faithless Looting trying to hit a land and then Burning Inquiry on turn 3. We don't have green mana for Life from the Loam yet, and I don't want to take my turn 2 just casting Loam anyways. We want to do the broken thing this time, and we have Talent. So I thought for a long time, and at the end, I kept only the basic mountain on top. The looting was there because, well, we need to find lands, and maybe we just stop there. We can even cast Otherworldly Gaze on our next upkeep, trying to hit our third land. My opponent will hit us with Ragavan. They'll get something from the top of our deck. It is a mountain, the mountain that we would love to see. And my opponent played a fetch land, cracked the fetch land for a basic plains and Celestial Purge. So as expected, my opponent has an answer to a red permanent. And now we have darts, we can kill Ragavan, but we don't have lands. Where are our lands? We need lands to win this. And my opponent's Ragavan will probably connect here because I will not sacrifice any lands here. My opponent took our Golgari Thug, that's alright. They played Marsh Flats and High Noon, and I wasn't expecting that. And this is probably too much to handle. How can we win against a High Noon? Well, we need lands. Again, we couldn't find land, only enablers, we need land. So natural draw here, a land, woof. But now what? To win this game, we need to kill Ragavan and then cast Loam to be able to cast Phoenix, to be able to cast Conflagrate, but we cannot bring back Phoenixes from our graveyard with High Noon resolved. And my opponent has 5 cards in their hand. So my opponent will try to connect to Ragavan again, but this time, no, sir. And it seems that my opponent's hand was pretty controlish this time. Ragavan, Celestial Purge, High Noon, and now they found a Flage, and they still have 3 cards in their hand. We'll grab Commercial District. We found another land. Is this good to keep on top, or we'll just cast Loam as our single spell next turn? I decided to keep it on top. We need lands, but I also want to see, I'm super interested to see what my opponent has in their hand. So Blood Creep it is. Or I can just cast Looting and try to be lucky, because chills are also good here. And that's what I decided to do. I discarded 2 Dredgers here, and this was my spell for this turn. Next turn we can cast Loam. But now my opponent can just cast Flage. They have another land. We are down to 6, by the way. And Flage will put us down to 3. Like, we need to find Creeping Chills. We cannot just cast Loam. We will need to cast Inquiry here just to find Creeping Chills. And let's remember that High Noon can put us down to 0 life easily because it can deal 5 damage to any target. So we are lost here unless we find more Chills. So I decided to cast Burning Inquiry, Dredge 5. We found 1 chill, Dredge 4, and Dredge 5. 2 chills. 2 chills are good. We are not dead now to High Noon plus Flage. But again, how can we win this? And this is a moment, guys, that we must remember the first, not the first Phoenix Dredge that I built. This was in the last February. But the recent successful Phoenix Dredge build, it was a giant build with 2 Bossejos in the main deck and also 3 or 4 Witherbloom commands that could answer cards like High Noon easily. Now we don't have that many answers. We are going with the most fast combo kill with Artist's Talent. Sometimes we have more enablers. We have several threats, but we don't have removals to permanents anymore in our main deck. And it's not everyone who is playing High Noon, so maybe my opponent has only 1, maybe my opponent has 2. You never know. This was our 3rd match against Energy in this tournament, and the first time we faced High Noon. And my opponent here, we can kill Ragavan, of course, but at this point we don't have anything we can do. So maybe, let's talk a little bit on the closing thoughts here, but maybe we can re-include Bossejo. Maybe it doesn't matter too much, it was just a variance. You can decide together with me. Yeah, my opponent is trying to destroy me, but then I have a less resource here. Otherworldly Phoenix, Otherworldly Gaze. If we had a Creeping Chill on top, we would survive and we could maybe win this game, which would be hilarious. But yeah, we ended in 2nd place, which is great, the best finish so far for any build of Phoenix Dredge. And I was incredibly happy to lose the finals because 2nd place was pretty good. All right, guys, great finish here. At some point I thought that I could actually win the challenge, but 2nd place is also a great achievement. Let's talk a little bit about our deck and how we can keep improving, considering the things that we faced here on this last tournament. Well, I do like my mana base. 19 lands are the minimum to play this deck. Don't go 18 lands. 19 lands are good. We could try to include at least 1 copy of Bossejo in the main deck, freeing one space in the sideboard. But to do that, we could probably take one fetch land. I would not touch the other lands. And if we take one fetch land here, for example, Artemisa, then we have only 10 sources of black mana for turn 1 Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize. So this is pretty tricky. If you want to include Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize in the main deck, you probably want at least 10 fetches and 1 Blood Crypt. So you just can't have it all. So including Inquisition of Kozilek in the main deck was a meta call for sure. I'm not sure if this will be the best configuration from now on. Maybe 2 weeks from now, we don't need Inquisition of Kozilek at all, and maybe everyone is trying to beat another S tier deck, and we don't need to worry about surgical extractions or you know what I mean. Maybe you don't need these cat spells in the main deck, and we just include the extra land, 1 extra Loam or something like that. We can include the 4th talent again in the deck. But as I told you in our previous video, including 4 discard spells in the main deck is just a way to pre-sideboard your deck due to how the metagame is evolving, has been evolving lately. Let's talk about Inquisition of Kozilek. It was pretty good here on this tournament, in our previous league as well. Many players believe that Inquisition is the right call because of the aggro decks that we saw in the metagame, even today here with Prowess and Energy. But of course, Thoughtseize is the best discard spell. Inquisition of Kozilek was just a meta call. But if in your local metagame you don't have many Prowess decks, for example, that can kill you easily on turn 3, you can just exchange Inquisition for Thoughtseize. I don't think Inquisition is better. This was just a meta call. In fact, I've been testing both Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek, and I decided to go with Inquisition because almost every time what I really want to discard from my opponent's hand costs 3 or less, and this way I don't have to put myself in danger on turn 1, because you crack a fetch land and you grab a Blood Crypt untapped and then you cast a Thoughtseize, you go down to 15 on turn 1 against a deck like Prowess. You'll be dead in 2 turns maybe, not 3. This has happened to me against Prowess. I had a turn 1 Thoughtseize and my opponent had a turn 2 win because they can deal exactly 15 damage on turn 2. Sometimes you need to play your second shock land untapped on turn 2. Then boom, you're down to 13 against Prowess and they can deal 13 damage in a single turn against you for sure. And that's why I invested some time to test Inquisition of Kozilek. I still like Inquisition, but if the metagame evolves in a different way, we can definitely just exchange it to Thoughtseize. Do what you feel you must do. In fact, maybe next week I will just play Thoughtseize myself. Maybe not the 4 copies, maybe only 3, because I would like to include the 4th Life from the Loam back to the deck, or maybe the 4th Artist's Talent, or both. As I said, this was just a way to pre-sideboard the deck due to the metagame. I was doing this a lot in leagues, after sideboarding, taking 1 Talent, 1 Loam, 1 Gaze, and 1 Conflagrate. I had 2 before, and now, or 1 Inquiry. I had 4 as well, to include 4 Inquisitions or 4 Thoughtseizes. This is the main thing that concerns me at the moment. Should I play with 4 discard spells or only 3? Because 4 are excellent. If you're playing discard spells in your main deck, you probably want them, right? You want to draw them. But at the same time, we are not that black. We have only 1 Blood Crypt. Of course, you don't need to cast Inquisition of Kozilek on turn 1 or Thoughtseize, but they are especially good when cast on turn 1, right? Especially against decks like Storm, like we had a Storm fight here on round 2. And Inquisition might be really good on turn 1, especially when you're on the draw. So that's my main thoughts here. You could think that my main concern is how to include the 4th Artist's Talent, but as we saw here today, as you probably noticed, this deck can easily win without talent. Sometimes you have talent and your opponent has an answer to talent. So they can exile talent, they can bounce talent, they can do something, and you just lost your turn 2. And this way, even Cathartic Reunion would be better than talent, as we had in the previous interactions of this deck here on our channel. Our sideboard kind of worked. We had no opportunities to include Hercules Recall, but in leagues, Izzet Affinity is something that happens a lot. So Recall plus Meltdown are pretty good combination against Affinity. I enjoyed Lightning X plus Conflagrate against Prowess and even against Boros Energy. Surgicals I think are good. Into the Football is a generic answer that you can include against almost everything if you are insecure. Every now and then some player has Leyline of the Void, so it's good to have more bounce spells. But we could just change those into the Flood Maul for Picker Poison, for example, to have more answers against Urza Saga and decks like Zoo. This is something that we can do. And the Bosejo, if you find a way to include the Bosejo in the main deck, we'll free one extra room here for another thing. Something like Gemstone Caverns, for example. Some of you like Gemstone Caverns to be faster when you're on the draw. Personally, I don't think Caverns solve what we need to solve with this deck. I think sometimes it's trap. You keep a medium hand because you are one turn faster, but then you don't have mountains, enough mountains to sacrifice with Lava Dart and combo kill on turn 3. So okay, you have a turn 1 talent, but then you cannot cast Gaze or Loam in the same turn because you are stuck with only 2 lands, and you draw your second Caverns. This happens, guys. This happens a lot sometimes. If you're playing a 4-color deck with Gemstone Caverns, sometimes is not the best land to bring back with Life from the Loam when you don't have it in your starting hand. So if you're lucky enough to trust your luck, go with 2, 3, or even 4 Gemstone Caverns in your sideboard. It's not exactly my cup of tea, but I understand why some players want to include Gemstone Caverns in the sideboard. That's pretty much it. I have guides in my Patreon. You can help me to buy a new laptop so I can create more quality videos here for you without this necessity here, without needing to re-record the same video with no commentary, because now my laptop is just overheating a lot and I definitely need to buy a new one. If you want to help me, please go there to my Patreon and support me as a content creator. It's not that expensive and it will definitely help me a lot. See you soon, guys. See you on our next video. Bye.